Hello everyone. This is going to be a review video for how to implement blueprint interfaces. Blueprint interfaces are an essential thing to learn in Unreal Engine because it is a way of accomplishing blueprint to blueprint communication without having the requirement of casting. There are many disadvantages of casting, and they're not the most performant way that we can build interaction systems between blueprints. So the first thing that I'm going to do to get started is I'm here in my root content directory, and I'm using a third-person template, as you can see here. So I did include starter content, so we have all those assets. This is all I need to really demonstrate this right now. So here in my base content directory, I'm going to make a new folder. I did that again by right-clicking in the empty space, choosing New Folder, and I'll call this Blueprint Interfaces. I suppose I should capital that I. Blueprint Interfaces, like that, okay? Or I might have put an underscore in between there. That might be even easier to read. Regardless, I'm going to go inside that folder, and I'm going to make a new asset. It's not going to be a blueprint actor in the same sense of most of the other classes we create. In fact, it's located not even in the same place in the contextual menu that you're about to see. If I right-click and we're creating a new blueprint class, normally we go here and click it and have to choose from one of these classes or one of these more specialized classes. In this case, however, that's not going to be the way we do it. Instead, we're going to right-click, not go all the way up here, but instead hover over Blueprint, and instead choose Blueprint Interface. In this case, I'm going to keep things very simple, and I will name this BPI underscore, that's Blueprint Interface, and I'm simply going to call this Interact, like so. Blueprint Interface Interact. Okay, so if I double click to open it, what you're going to find out is that this is a read-only function. And basically the only thing that I can do here is I can rename the function if I wish. And I'm going to call it interact, like so. And it is possible to add inputs and outputs to this function, but that won't be needed for today's example. I just want you to get the essence of how these interfaces work and how they are going to be so much easier to implement and also so much more performant than casting very often. So believe it or not, that's all we have to do. We just have to compile and save. And I want to remind you that no code, no blueprint scripting is possible in this graph because it is a read-only graph. So it exists only in name at this point, and it's simply called interact. Okay, so let's start by closing that. And this interact blueprint is going to have to be implemented in two places. One of those places is going to be in the actor that we are trying to interact with. So, and usually that's going to be some form of blueprint class. So we'll just do something mundane right now, and we will make a door that can open and close. I think you're going to find this method a lot more appealing than the overlap method because you'll be able to control it better, as you're going to see. So I'll make a new folder here, and I'm going to call it door. And inside that is where we're going to create our door blueprint. So we'll right-click, make a new blueprint class. Door just has to be of type actor, so we'll make that class, and I will call it door underscore, BP underscore door. Okay, This is the new naming conventions, is put BP underscore first. So we'll open that up, and there's a few things that we're going to need in here, so I might as well dock that for the time being. Under the scene root, we're going to have to add some components here, and I'll hit the add button. And the first thing I'm going to need is a static mesh, and this is going to be for the door frame, like so. I know that I have one in starter content, so here, while I have door frame highlighted in the components panel, I will keep it selected and then look in the details panel where I can specify which static mesh I want to use. So in this case, I'll just type the word door, and I'll eventually see the door frame right there. That's the mesh that comes with starter content. So of course I can zoom out and I can inspect this mesh. I could change out the material if I wanted to. But I'm sorry, that was the physical material, but I could put some other kind of material on this at any time that I want. This is fine for now. I'm going to select the default scene root again and add another static mesh, and that's going to be the door itself. These should be siblings. I'll just call it door mesh. And here, where I can choose my static mesh, I'm going to choose door. And that's the one, okay? So obviously they're not lined up, so I'm going to get them roughly lined up. And from experience, I know that I have to reduce the snapping scale to usually at least 5 before I can get this to fit in here symmetrically and as needed. Okay, so that looks pretty good to me. I make sure it's about halfway and looks good from both sides. And I think we're in pretty good shape. For now, I'm going to compile and save because it just occurred to me that the door mesh itself, let me see, does that look like it's clipping a little bit? And it might be Z fighting with the door frame a little bit. So maybe I can make that a tiny bit narrower. And I'm going to do that using the scaling, but I'm going to turn the grid off because I just want to do that by a tiny bit, okay, like that much. And then we'll also turn off the grid for the transform, and I'm going to just sort of slide it into place. Okay, that's going to do. Compile and save. It just occurred to me as I was saying that the door mesh that comes in starter content comes in without collision, and I don't want us to be able to just walk right through the door. So we'll take care of that right now. Go to Content, Starter Content. Then we're going to go into Props, and the door mesh lives inside that folder. We need to open the mesh editor by double-clicking the door. We can inspect the mesh if we want. And we can just go up here where it says collision and add a box simplified collision. Hopefully now you can see the wireframe that's around the door. So if it turns out that I'm in this shot, I'm sorry, my office lights go out automatically if I don't move around frequently enough. Okay, so now it's got that collision that will stop us from walking right through it, and that will propagate, of course, to its use inside the door blueprint. Okay, so that now has collision. We're going to go to the event graph, and we're going to implement the opening and closing of this door in a way that you haven't seen me do. What will fire off this event is something that does not yet exist. So I'm going to set up the rest of the logic first. Today, I'm going to start with a node called a flip-flop, like that, okay? And we're going to get the door mesh, and ultimately what we want to do is to set relative rotation. Okay, set relative rotation. We know we have to do that. And we know that we don't want the door to snap open and then snap shut. So what we need is a timeline, add timeline. And we can rename this if we wish, door transition time. Okay, now I've got to get inside of this node to add a float track. So we're going to double click there, click plus track. My meeting controls are in the way. Plus track, and we're going to add a float track. And rotation is a vector, but all of the members in that struct x, y, and z are unto themselves just floats. So, and we're only rotating on one axis. So this does not need to be a vector track. It can simply be a float track. And I could rename it again if I want door. Oh, goodness. Hitting backspace in my keyboard is not working for some reason. It's probably out of batteries. Let's try that again. Doesn't matter. Okay. I'll try to get through the rest of this with a malfunctioning keyboard. Let's start with determining a duration. So we'll say 3 seconds. My keyboard worked for that for some reason. And I'm going to make a key by right-clicking near the beginning of the timeline, choosing Add Key to curve float 0. Round off the time to 0 and keep the value at 0. Okay? So far so good, and we've got that key sitting right there. Now we can click somewhere near the other side, add another key the same way, but this time I'm going to round this off to the time value that is equivalent to the length of the sequence. So we'll highlight that, and we'll just type 3 for 3 seconds, and I'll set the value to 1. And we can then zoom to fit horizontal and vertical. For rotating doors, I like them to have like an ease in, ease out, more Bezier type of curve. So now I can left click either one of these two keyframes and then shift left click the other one so that they are both highlighted. I hope you can see that. And now I can right click either one of them and choose auto, and this will give me a nice curve. So we can compile and save. I don't want to close the blueprint yet, but I do want to close the timeline. When I do, you'll notice that it has a return value for new track 0 that's going to output a float value. And we're going to use that to drive the alpha of a lerp. Okay, so we will just right click and search for lerp. And you want the one that's under this float category, okay? So lerp, and this is going to drive the alpha, which is how long along that range of values have we progressed. So for B, I'm just going to, I could populate that with a float variable if I wanted to, but in this case, I'll just hard code it to 120 degrees. That seems like a reasonable amount of rotation, okay? So now the next thing that I can do is off of update is I can set relative rotation for the door, and I'm going to split the struct pin so I have access to the X, Y, and Z. Remember, we're only trying to rotate this on the Z-axis, so I can take this float output and connect it to new rotation Z. Not changing anything about the relative rotation of the X or Y axes, okay? So the flip-flop is simply going to be A is going to be play, and B is going to be reverse. Now, obviously, something has to trigger this, some kind of an event. But that event is not available to us yet, and we're going to see why in a moment. So let's hit compile and save. And remember, at the beginning, I made a blueprint interface. It's right here in this folder, Blueprint Interfaces, and it's called BPI Interact. So we'll go into the content directory one more time and go back to our, actually I'd still dock the door, excuse me. And I want to now implement the interface. That's all I have to do for any Blueprint actor that I want to be able to use this interface, is to add it. And we can add that to this class by going to the class settings button. And here we can see implemented interfaces. If I twirl that down, if yours isn't already, it'll probably say no interfaces. So I'll click add, and I'm going to search for the one that we made, BPI_interact, and it is right there. Okay, so now this implements that interface, and the fact that it does is going to be important because that is the key to enable us to create the event that's going to drive this logic. And by the way, this is obviously simpler logic than what we were doing before with casting and the equal Boolean and all that sort of stuff. The other nice thing about Blueprint interfaces is that when they are called as events, it can be one interface, and which is why I gave it a generic name. I gave it the generic name interact. And interact in the case of a door just means to open and close it. But that same interact event could be used with anything else, any other blueprint. And it doesn't have to necessarily be the opening or closing of a door. It can literally be anything that you script in that blueprint. If it's something that you want to be able to interact with easily and not have to memorize which key on the keyboard it is. Most of the time interact, by the way, for computer games is the letter E because it's right close to the WASD. So I can click E when I'm ready to interact. But not quite yet. Also observe that under the My Blueprint, that tab, you can see now where it says interfaces, we've got this one called interact. Okay, so if you don't see that there, just make sure that you added it here. Okay, and I'm not going to implement the event yet. Okay, compile. I'm going to go back to the viewport for the time being, and there's different ways that you can implement this. Today, just for simplicity, I'm going to do it with a collision box. So again, I don't want it to be parented by the mesh, the door mesh, or the door frame, but to the default scene root. And I will add a box collision. And I'm just going to scale this up and around this door. Like so. Let's get my scaling tool and make this fairly forgiving. Oops. Whee! Sometimes my fingers betray me. Okay. And also I guess my camera speed could be slowed down a little bit, but we'll be okay. All right. And maybe I'll just increase this so that the character doesn't have to be right up on the door as it's trying to open. I don't want the door to eventually clip with the character mesh. So I want there to be a certain amount of leeway. Okay, lights, you can turn back on again. Thank you. Okay, and of course I want it to be tall enough to accommodate my character mesh. Sorry about that. And I can scale that up probably. Let me just see. Yeah, it's really, really far below the door mesh. I don't want anything else to interfere with triggering this. So I'm just going to take a look at, yeah, right about there, I think we'll do. All right. Compile, and then save. Now this box collision, I want you to understand, is now an integral part of this blueprint actor. We can think of this as a bounding box, but it is part of this blueprint actor, and it's worthwhile to keep that in the back of your mind. So let me save that. And I'll leave that docked for now. And we're going to go back to our third person map. Now I'm going to go into the third person folder and implement that interface again, but on our character. In this case, our character is going to be under blueprints, BP underscore third person character. And it too, under class settings, is going to have a place where we can implement interfaces. And you can see right now it says no interfaces. So let's add the interface, the same one, BPI underscore interact, like that. And it will appear over here, just like it did in the other blueprint, okay? So right now, both blueprints, the door blueprint as well as the character blueprint, have this interact interface. Okay, so now let's find some empty room here, and we're going to start off this code with, let's say, an input. And I'll make a temporary, like a prototyping input here using the letter E. I'm going to right-click and type keyboard. Technically, this is not the most correct way to make inputs in Unreal Engine, but this is just for prototyping. Eventually, remind me, and I'll teach you what's called the enhanced input system. But this is fine for now. Okay, so when I press the button, okay, what I want to do after that is to get a node which is called a for each loop with break. And I want the one that's here under array, okay? And I think the reason that it may not have worked last time is that there's more than one of these, and I might have clicked the one that was not under array. I have the feeling that that may have been what caused it not to work, but I'm going to get this, okay? And connect my pressed execution pin into the for each loop with break. Now, the array is we're going to pull off of here, and we are going to get overlapping actors. And what this is going to do is it's going to loop over and over and over again as soon as I press E, but it will only happen if I'm within that bounding box, okay? So this will not matter to that door at all unless I'm overlapping its, the collision box that's around it. So we'll find that this will loop a certain number of times, and it will try to find every actor that is overlapping that collision volume. But we want to use this as sort of a filter, okay? We want to only detect things that implement the interface. So here, off of array element, I'm going to pull off and search for does implement interface, okay? And I have to specify the interface class here, and I hope I didn't forget that when we were in class, but that's a possibility, BPI underscore interact. If I search for it, eventually I'll find it, okay? So it's going to loop through all the overlapping actors, and if one or more of them have the interface implemented, this will, this Boolean is going to become true, essentially. And most Booleans, by the way, are used for flow control along with branch nodes. So I'm going to put a branch right here. And if it doesn't find anything that implements an interface, this will return false. But I know it's going to find my player character as soon as I overlap that volume. And if I press E, I know that that's going to satisfy that condition, okay? Now, now that I have this set up, what I need to do is I need to send a message. I need to send a message to interact. So off of true, I'm going to pull off and search for interact. And I want the one that is that says message. And I find that sometimes I have to kind of search for it. Okay, so it's under the interface, BPI interact message. I did untick context sensitive there, and I found the node that I needed right here. It's the interact message. Okay. The target for this node is also going to be the array element. Okay, so let me do a little bit of rerouting so you can see what's happening here. What's connected to what? Sorry? Got to get that right on there in just a certain way. There we go. Okay, so that array element is therefore the test object for the doesImplement interface, but it is also the target for the interact message that we're sending. Okay, and this should be okay. Compile and save, and it didn't give me any errors. Okay, that's great. Now I can go back to the door blueprint and get into the event graph. And now I can create the interact event right before this flip-flop. Here is the interface, and in order to implement the event, I can either double-click it or right-click it and choose Implement Event. And it will show up right there. And I can just plug it in, okay, like so. And there's a couple of other things I could do, I suppose, but this is going to be very, very simple. So compile and save, and we'll go back to our map. Let's now find our door blueprint and drag it into the world, okay? And you can see where my player start is. I'll back it off a little bit. And when I go into play, matter of fact, let me do play in editor so it's full screen. There it is. My eyesight is failing me. And every now and then my computer screen seems to turn off and then recover within a few seconds. So right now that's happening. So I'll enjoy my chai. So at this point right now, if I press E, nothing's going to happen, right? Because I'm not inside of the collision volume of that door. I am not an overlapping actor, therefore. But once I'm inside that collision volume, if I hit E, the door is going to open. And then if I hit E again, the door is going to close. Now, this is better than an overlap because I can control that much more. If I open and then change my mind, I can close it just by hitting E again. I can let it open all the way. I can close it. I can change my mind at any time. Every time I hit E, it is doing the code that was in our door blueprint. So one thing, though, is that if this is the entrance to another room, don't forget to shut the door behind you if you want it to be shut behind you, and now you can pretend you're in some other room. Okay, so the nice thing, though, about blueprint interfaces, okay, so let me just comment this out by highlighting it. Here, this is, by the way, again, in my character blueprint. I'll comment this out, and we'll call this interact interface. And you'll notice that nowhere in this code did I need to get a hard reference or couple anything. No casts were done. And this is now reusable script that I can implement on other blueprint actors. And the interact event can mean to other blueprint actors whatever we script, okay? So if I walk up to a lamp and I press interact, as long as it implements the interact interface, then to a lamp, it might be turning it on or off, for example. But we do not have to rescript anything here. We can reuse this in many, many ways. Oh, there's one thing I forgot. I do recommend, because we used a for each loop with break, we don't want that to continue looping once it's found the actor, that is the character. So we'll take the output execution pin here, and we'll put it into the break of the loop so that we can stop it from looping. And I will reroute that node. Reroute that wire, I beg your pardon. Try to make that as readable as I can. Just pull that out. Okay, so I think that hopefully you can follow that. So this is again inside my player character. So we'll compile and save. Now this is reusable. So what we'll do next is we'll make a lamp, okay? And we'll use the exact same interface, but that interface, when the event is called, it's not going to have anything to do with opening or closing a door. It's going to have to do with turning a light on or off. So we'll make a folder. Am I in content? Yeah. We'll make a brand new folder. And we'll call this one lamp. Okay? And for this one, we're going to open it up, make a new blueprint class. Again, this can be an actor, and I'll call it BP underscore lamp. Okay? Lights turn on. Okay, there you go. So let's open this up. And we're going to script some similar functionality here. But first, let's add our components. The first thing that I want is a static mesh. And I can rename this lamp. And with that highlighted, I'll go to the static mesh. And we will just search for the starter content lamp. Of course, this could be as extraordinary of a lamp as you choose, using either marketplace assets that you've modeled yourself, or perhaps something that you find on Quixel Bridge. And don't forget that they've got some awfully nice stuff there in Quixel Bridge. But I want the ceiling lamp, not the sconce that goes on the wall. So we'll use that mesh, and I'm just going to leave it there. Now, as long as I've got this mesh highlighted, I want to put an actual light underneath it. And I want it to be a sibling to the lamp. Actually, excuse me, I want it to be a child of the lamp. If I have the lamp selected and I add another static mesh, it's ultimately going to center itself properly, which will make it easier for me to place it. So we're going to add whatever type of light is appropriate in this case, and I think that for a fixture like this, a spotlight is what I want. So I'll choose spotlight. That's deliberately indented to the lamp. However, we don't see it because it's way up here. One thing I notice right away is that it's rotated incorrectly, at least for this blueprint. So, excuse me, spotlight. So I'll rotate it 90 degrees. And now I'm going to translate it down so it is sufficiently placed. Let's see, the outer cone angle for that spotlight. Let's see, I'm just going to kind of estimate. And the inner cone angle, let's turn that up so that it has a bit of a fall off. Okay. And the attenuation radius just specifies, hopefully you can see this, for what distance is it casting light. Okay, so it's not going to be that far up in the air, so I think it's going to be fine if we just leave it something like that. And let's make it a very obvious color other than white, so I want you to actually see this happening. So we'll turn off red and we'll turn off green, and this will be just a blue light. And we are going to give it a ridiculous intensity of maybe 20,000. And we're going to just test this real quick in terms of the way it looks, just by getting one, not from there, but by getting one and just placing it inside the world, dragging it up, and make sure that it's casting a light where it's supposed to. Okay, so obviously it is. Beg your pardon, did need to clip on the wall there. And maybe I can also make it a little darker atmosphere here so that light shows up better. Okay, I may increase its intensity even more. So let's go to, well, let's change this to like candelas, for example. And I'll set it to 200 candelas. Okay, and let's see if that makes any difference. Okay, so that's very obvious. Okay, so if that's on or if that's off, it's very, very obvious. Going back into the lamp, we have not yet implemented the interface. We already know that it exists inside of our third-person character, which looks like I have to save. But it's not implemented into the lamp yet. So again, we're going to go to Class Settings, Implemented Interfaces, and add the same one we used before for the door, BPI_interact. Okay, and when you find it, select that, and now we've got the interact event right there. So we'll go to the event graph from here and get rid of all of this, and we're going to do a similar type of logic. I'm going to start with a flip-flop. Okay, and I want the spotlight. If it's a light, I prefer for it to start off so that the first time I press the button, that it turns it on, and then if I press the button again, it turns it off. So with the spotlight selected, I'm going to turn the visibility to false. Okay, and that's going to be the default value. Okay, I'll pull the spotlight component into the graph, and now pulling off of here, I can type set visibility. Okay, set visibility. And that will be the A of my flip-flop, okay? And the new visibility is going to go not false, but true. I want to turn on the light. So now I want to copy and paste that node, put one right down here. It needs the same target, so I can double dip on the spotlight. I don't need another spotlight node, it's the same thing. And off of B, I can place that into set visibility, just like that, okay? Except this time it's going to turn it back off, okay? So now what we need is we are in the blueprint_lamp. And remember, the code for looping through the bounding box and all that and searching for actors that implement this interface is something we already wrote. We don't have to write that again. So all I have to do now is to go to my interact interface, right-click, and implement the event. In this case, event interact. But what does it mean to the light? It means turning the light on and off. But the same interface and the same reusable code that I have in my character blueprint doesn't have to change. There are no hard references. I don't know if you know this, but when you do a cast, you get a hard reference to that object. And the problem with that is that as long as that actor exists in the world, that hard reference and everything that comes with it is loaded in memory 100% of the time as soon as you've made the cast. In this case, this is something that is a soft reference, and it's because we broke the for loop as I showed you before, this is only looping while I hold E and only until I find the actor that's implementing the interface. And when I call the message, that breaks the loop, so it's no longer in memory, and we don't even have a hard reference to it here. So that's perfect, okay? And we'll go to the lamp, and we'll hit compile and save. I have to make sure that there's a bounding box, however, so we'll go back to the viewport, something for my character to overlap, and this doesn't have that yet. So I'll take the spotlight, and I'll probably be walking under it. Maybe I should take the lamp. Yeah, I'll do it with the lamp, and I'll add a box collision, just like we did for the door, because I have to have something to, overlap with. This, by the way, is all the way up there, so now we can pull it down underneath, and we'll scale it to where the character, oops, didn't mean to do that, we'll scale it to where the character is likely to be standing when standing underneath this thing. And again, we'll make it fairly forgiving. Let's look at this from a couple angles. Okay. Compile and save. Now, because I reset the default visibility of our spotlight to false, remember, when I go back into play, this light will not be on. The only way that I can turn it on is if I enter the bounding box or the box collision and press E. Okay, when I press E, it's going to loop through the overlapping actors and find our character, because our character does implement the interface and no other actors in this scene do, other than the light in the door. But the door doesn't matter because it's got its own bounding box, and I can't do anything about opening and closing that door anyway unless I'm overlapping the bounding box. Okay, so there go my lights again. So compile and save. And we're going to go back into our map, and you'll see that that's no longer casting light onto the ground. All right. So if I stand far enough away from the lamp or the door, I can press E all day long and nothing's going to happen. But if I get close enough to the door and press E, I can open it and close it at will just by pressing E, because that's what interact means to the door blueprint. And if I go into the bounding box for the light and I press E, I can toggle the light on and off because that's what it means to that blueprint. So I would like it very much if for the projects that you're working on, if you've grown accustomed to casting, what you'll find that the deeper you get into a project, if you cast too much, you're going to end up not only wasting performance, but also creating, in computer science, they call this coupling, and dependencies where they don't need to exist. So this is an easier way, well, arguably. I mean, this is technically considered a more advanced technique than casting. Frankly, more people learn about casting before they learn about this. And most YouTube videos that teach this idea are rather confusing. So I hope that by following along with this video that you can learn how to use interfaces, and you can have more than one. Not all interfaces have to be interact. Like some interfaces can be more specialized if you need them to be. But even with just one interact interface, interact can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different types of blueprint actors, and it is simply whatever you script for that blueprint. Let's say it was like a platform that rises up and down, right? I could script that logic, inside of the elevator platform blueprint. Okay, I stand on this object and I press E. Okay, it's the same interact button, but it lifts me up to another level or another floor of the building, and if I press E again, it will take me back down, and so on. Okay, and the code in the destination or receiving blueprint can be as complex or as simple as it needs to be. I think that you'll have to agree that if we look at the door blueprint, this is nowhere near as complicated. It had nothing to do with box collision overlaps and casting and equal booleans and stuff like that. It's much simpler code, therefore this code itself is lighter weight. And the same thing for the lamp. Okay, very, very simple. Remember, flip-flop is just every time I press the button, it will alternate between the A output execution pin and the B output execution pin. So this is a very lightweight piece of scripting here, so the lamp, is a lightweight actor. All right, so let's just, and of course in here, for example, if this was the door before play and before reverse, I could do place. Maybe we haven't worked with audio yet, I don't recall, but if we did, I could put the logic for playing the sounds right here before the door transitions open or closed. Okay, so we'll hit compile and save one more time, get back into the map, test this one last time. Okay, I can let it go all the way, I can close it, I can open it and change my mind and it'll close. I can open it, walk through it. It's not going to close behind me due to an end overlap, but if I'm still in the bounding block box, I can press E again, and that's more like what I would have to do in real life anyway. If I'm opening a door, walking into a room, and I want to close the door behind me, I would have to do it myself in most cases. Most houses I've been to, for example, don't have self-opening and self-closing doors. I suppose I can also mention that I could acquire some animations for the character, or even make my own, where it has to reach out his hand and turn the doorknob if we wanted to. But that's not so important right now. I just want you to grasp how easy interfaces are and how undeserved they are for their reputation of being difficult to use. I don't think that they're difficult to use. I just don't think that they're explained particularly well in most tutorial videos. So I hope this is an exception, and if you have any questions, please do let me know. Okay, so thank you very much for your time. I'll see you in the next video.